Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode in our current season of Wild Wild Podcast. My name is Adrian, and I am joined by my co-host, Rod Barnett. Hello, Rod.
Hello, Adrian. I'm doing pretty well today. I am happy to be speaking to someone, and I'm glad that our season here continues to perk along. This is turning out to be a very interesting season, and
Yeah,
when we started it, I'll have to admit, I was a little shocked that you came up with the list that you did, and shocked at how
okay.
many of them I had never seen. And this week's
Mm,
film definitely falls into that category.
yeah, me too. I think there's maybe only a couple that I've seen before, so it's interesting. I'm glad that normally it's just me who hasn't seen them, so I'm glad that we're both in the dark a little bit. You could almost say we're sort of stumbling through this in the dark, like we've got a bag over our heads.
Or a big black mask that seems
Yeah.
impossible to see through. But yes, of
Mm,
course.
I don't know what's going on with that guy's costume. Yeah. So we are. I looked at Letterboxd, and I believe this is film number 50 that we will have covered on the podcast.
Really?
There you go. Although, so it's a kind of milestone. We've done more than 50 episodes, but that's because of a few bonus ones I've chucked in. So technically, this is our 50th film. Of course, there have been some episodes where we've done two films. So anyway, the two don't correlate. But yeah, 50 movies, many of which have been long forgotten and are not currently available to buy if you wanted to buy them anyway.
Hmm.
This week's film is only available on YouTube, and you've got a choice of a quite poor copy or an even worse copy if you want to watch it.
This is true.
Now, before we start, I wanted to share some feedback. Normally, I would read the feedback at the end, but I think this one is important, Rod, for us to hear at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
So, we had a message from one of our listeners, Guccio Gasparini, on Instagram, and I enjoyed his message very much. He says, "Hey guys, I really enjoy your show and the commentary you provide to these forgotten gems. Thank you very much, Guccio." Now, I could just stop there and say that's great, but I do have to read the next part.
Oh no. Okay.
I just wanted to say that your pronunciation of Italian words are really off.
Uh, uh, Going to continue, sadly.
I know, I'm so sorry. Um, and then he sent me a really good Italian pronunciation uh, basics guide. But he gives us a tip because obviously last time I was talking about, because we ended up talking about Eurovision, and I mentioned the Sanremo song contest, song festival,
Yeah.
but I was pronouncing it Sanremo because I'm English and that's how we say Remo, I suppose. But he's pointed out, he does say, because I thanked him, and he replied, "No worries, I hope I didn't come across as rude." No, not at all. I like the honesty.
Mm.
But mentions that Sanremo should pronounce with an E like enjoy. So Sanremo, not Sanremo. So there's a little tip for us both, Rod, as we'll see how we get on today.
Well, see, this is you letting your side down here, Adrian, because
I know
you're supposed to be my Italian pronunciation ace in the hole.
I know it clearly shows that 4 years of Duolingo doesn't, and one and one evening class during COVID does not make you a perfect Italian speaker.
Apparently not.
So anyway, uh,
I am disappointed.
I know. So we'll do our best. But thank you for pointing that out. I am trying to improve. If I'm going to Italy in a couple of weeks, so this episode will be the last one for maybe a month. I don't know how long it'll take us to get to the next one because I'll be in Bologna at the Il Cinema Ritrovato festival for 2 weeks. So
Scumbag.
I'm so sorry. If anyone is listening and you're in Italy and you're going to the festival, drop me a line. But while I'm there, I will do my best to listen to how people speak properly and see if I can improve my pronunciation. Anyway, so let's get to our film for this week. We
Yes,
are
let us.
talking We're talking about, now this is a director that we've spoken about many times before, but officially this is his first film. And it is, of course, Ruggero Deodato's Fenomenal and the Treasure of Tutankamen. Cue the Fenomenal music.
Fenomenal!
Quite good music, actually. It's probably one of the best things about the film. Bruno Nicolai, I believe.
I agree. I like the music quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
It's sometimes a little disconcerting because it doesn't always seem to fit the tone of what's going on, but at the same time it is bouncy and it is fun.
Oh, it's very 60s kind of lounge, easy listening type stuff. I like it a lot. It did get a CD release a few years ago as a soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
I did look that up.
It's more than the film, apparently. My God.
Well, exactly. It's the only thing that they figured had any commercial value was the soundtrack.
Very strange.
So yes, Fenomenal. I'm gonna mangle it. Fenomenal e il tesoro di Tutankamen. And depending on where you come from or which poster you look at, Fenomenal can be spelt with an F. It can be spelt with an FH. Or it can be spelt with a PH. They all seem interchangeable. But yeah, this is a character who we're not really sure for quite a long time into the film if Fenomenal is a hero or are they a villain or an anti-hero. We're not entirely sure what their deal is at all, really. What are they doing?
Well,
Why are they there?
I think I have a theory now. You mentioned anti-hero, and so I began to think in that vein when I was watching it. And hold on to your hats, folks. When I was watching it for the second time, I began to think, maybe because he does things that are on one side of the line. He seems to really not be pleased with drug smugglers because that's the first action he takes is to actually bust up a drug smuggling ring and make sure that they get arrested in Marseille. But at the same time, he's also clearly doing criminal crap as well. And so I wondered, is it not that he's not an anti-hero necessarily? Maybe he's an anti-villain. I don't really know. Maybe he's kind of striding the line between both, but being a bit more on the side of the criminality. But I don't know.
Now, there were two reasons that I've wanted to watch this film for a while, but two main reasons I chose it. One was, of course, Ruggero Deodato. And the second one was the poster, which is a very striking image of this sort of hugely muscular, almost panther-like masked hero leaping in a sort of action pose, almost 3D coming out of the poster.
It's fantastic. One would almost say phenomenal.
Exactly. And you're looking at this poster thinking, wow, this film looks amazing. And then you see the actual Fenomenal in his costume, and it bears no resemblance at all to this picture.
I thought there was going to be some cool, something he's wearing, shoes of some sort that seemed panther-like in some way that allowed him to scurry up walls, and I thought we were going to have the eye slit like the poster draws him as having, but no, it's nothing at all. That's not the way it goes.
No. So Deodato, we've spoken about him many times before. His first film as director was actually Antonio Margheriti's
Hercules, Prisoner of Evil.
Hercules, Prisoner of Evil,
yes.
Of course, which you and I appeared on the Bloody Pit many years ago to talk about that one. So if you haven't heard us talk about that, do check that out. I'll tweet the link at some point. But yeah, so unofficially that was his first film because Margheriti was just too busy doing the special effects, and he had about 7 other films that he was probably all directing at the same time.
Yeah, he was directing he was signing his name as director to at least 2 films at a time right then, because money.
Exactly. And Deodato, as assistant director, basically stepped up, and it's a good film. I think Hercules: Prisoner of Evil, for what it is, is pretty good.
It's a good mid-range example of the peplum genre. I enjoy it.
And then, now, according to what you read, this was his next film, or according to Roberto Curti, he actually made Gungala before this one. Gungala,
the
Pantera Nuda, which we covered in the last season. And but that he also took over from the original director on that one, according to something I read. So technically, this was his first solo directing feature. Although, of course, he still went under a pseudonym as what is it, Roger Rockefeller.
Roger Rockefeller, yes.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be Rockefeller, but on the poster they missed out the middle E.
Yeah,
there's Rockefeller, which is pretty funny. Again, because it was believed that films directed by Italians were not popular in Italy, so they wanted them to think they were directed by Americans. So he picked the successful-sounding American name of Roger Rockefeller. And then he made this movie. It's not adapted from a fumetti, but it's clearly
influenced by...
almost to the point of sort of plagiarizing Diabolic.
Yeah.
But
I would agree.
If Diabolic, was just not as cool, it would be this guy.
And as if the movie wanted to pretend that we didn't know who Diabolic was for the majority of the picture. It's very strange.
Yeah. So the story behind the film is that the producer, Mario Parenti, was also the star. He wanted to be a movie star, so he got the funding together to make this film and put himself and his wife in it. His wife is Lucretia Love, which is such a good name. I can't believe it's a real name. It's like a vanity project.
Yeah, exactly. And it's strange. I immediately, when I learned that piece of information, I thought, I wonder what else he did. He did nothing else as an actor. This is it. This is the one credit.
As a producer.
But as producer, he did a number of other films.
Yeah. So he did, because he put together Zenobel for Deodato a couple of years later, also starring Lucretia
Oh, wait a minute.
Love.
I'm sorry. No, he did do a few other films. I apologize, but...
But he wasn't really a phenomenal actor, you could say.
No. But the tricky thing that you'll notice about his acting credits is that they seem to strangely mirror films that he produced. I wonder how that happened.
Well, I mean, why not? If you have the ability to raise the cash to get a film made and you want to be a movie star, then why not? But yeah, it's kind of like a glorified home movie, I suppose.
To a degree.
Just him and his wife making a film, getting the cheapest, youngest director they could find to direct it.
This guy knows where to point a camera. Get him.
Yeah. I mean, in things I've read, Deodato is not particularly enamored of this film.
And I can understand.
He said that he doesn't remember much about it, and he's just like not really interested in talking about it in interviews. And understandably, I mean, I've just seen it. I almost did watch it again because I figured I must have missed something. But I should backtrack slightly. So I said there are 2 copies on YouTube. One is the English language cut, which is really poor quality.
Yeah,
I think it was released on VHS at some point in America in the 80s, so it must come from that. Very poor quality, but at least you can understand what they're saying, because then there is also, and it's also cropped, so it is clearly a 4:3 VHS release. There is a more sort of 16:9 version that is clearly, it's more like a 2nd generation than a 5th generation copy on YouTube as well, under the Italian title, but there are no subtitles. So I thought I'd be clever, and I've recently discovered how I've got some tools to make AI subtitles. So I did that, and I mean, how did you find my? Did you watch the one with the subtitles?
I watched both, and I have to
Okay.
say, I kind of went back and forth just to compare the two, and I have to say the AI generated subtitles are amusingly off. I'm not
Yeah, they're
sure
not
how
good.
different. There's no way for me to know how different the Italian dub is to the English dub, but I will tell you that my chuckles were hearty when it was
Yeah.
clearly getting names wrong,
Oh
and
yeah.
that led to more than a few moments of me amusingly popping back over to the English version, going, okay, who's what are they talking about again? Let me try to figure this out.
Because I did initially think I could just take the English soundtrack and dub it onto the Italian one, but
Yeah.
the English cut is trimmed by about 3 minutes, and it's not that there's one scene missing. They've shortened it a little bit. They've trimmed
Yeah.
scenes to make them a bit far. Which, because this film is, let's be honest, quite boring, I think they probably felt they needed to tighten it up a bit, and it probably helped.
Now here's where
Um,
I'm going to differentiate myself just a little bit. My first
okay.
viewing of this film, I agreed with you. I thought the first half of it was so boring that I joked to myself that I might have to punch myself in the skull to keep going, because like, come on, come on, you gotta
Yeah.
stick your eyes on the screen and keep going, buddy. But the the thing that I noticed is that the second half, it gets more interesting. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it gets a lot more interesting once you get into the last 40 minutes of the picture. But
Mm,
that first, who
I know.
if they wanted to shorten this film, they could have shortened it considerably in the first
Yeah.
half.
Well, we don't, because we see Phenomenal. As you mentioned, he attacks a boatload of heroin smugglers,
And there's nothing wrong with that, other
and
than
that's good.
other than a little bit of staging clumsiness in the fist
Yeah.
fights,
Oh yeah. The,
and some, shall we say, liberties taken with the editing in the action
yeah.
sequence. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, that's perfectly
Agreed.
acceptable, and that's fine. And the film kind of gets off
Yeah.
to what you hope is going to be
I
a
know. But
yeah,
then
it's not
we
bad.
don't. Then the end. Then the credits kick in, and then we don't see him again for half an hour.
I know.
It's
Well,
like
yeah, we don't see
they
him,
forgot.
or really even the character who is obviously him,
Yeah.
until like what 25 or 27 minutes
Mm,
into the film. It's like, man, what are we? Okay,
yeah. So
none of these old fogies are that guy. What is going on?
I I I was going to go back and watch the English one as well to see if it helped me to understand what was going on, because I was
Oh,
pretty
it would.
confused.
The English dub is not at all confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Although some of the reviews I've read, well, the book that I've read, basically call this film quite a jumbled mess,
it
and it's
is.
quite confusing. So I figured I probably didn't miss that much after all. But there were some funny bits I noticed that with the subtitles. I mean, it spelt Tutankamen in so many different ways. That was quite fun.
I know it depends on who's speaking.
Yeah, but just basic stuff like at one point, a woman asks a man if he will go out with her for dinner. I think she says, "Let's talk about it over dinner."
Right.
And in Italian, dinner is cena, and the subtitle just thought it said China. So what it said in the subtitles was, "Shall we talk at China?" And I thought, well, they're in Paris right now. That's a long way to go for a chat.
Well,
But it did actually mean it
I
meant
didn't see
dinner.
that. I didn't see that stretch of the subtitles. That would have made me.
Yeah,
I mean, were they going to a Chinese restaurant? Did we
yeah.
get are the subtitles close, but we're still wrong? Yeah, very
Yeah.
strange.
So it turns out that AI subtitling is quite good, but not quite good enough. But it was kind of a desperate measure because I wanted to be able to see the picture, and it definitely was better looking. So
Yeah.
for those of you who are listening, if you want to watch this, you've got your choice there, really, of good picture, no subtitles, or poor picture, but in English. But shall we, before we get into the plot, so we mentioned the star,
hmm
Mario Parenti, about whom there's not a lot to say except he was a producer with ambitions. But should we talk a little bit about Lucretia Love, his wife? Because
I,
she's actually have got a
Yeah,
much more interesting career.
much more interesting career. I knew the name, but not
Mm.
much about her. I did not know she was born in Texas. I'll put it that way.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
the more I learned about her, the more interesting I thought she was. She didn't have a very long film career, but I have seen her in a couple of films. The Corman
Hmm.
produced film The Arena, The Killer Reserve Nine Seats, which is a fun little Spanish film,
Hmm.
and Blind Man. She's supposedly in an uncredited role, but I don't know.
Yeah.
She's in, like I say, several of the movies produced by her husband, but she also turns up in She Beast in a
Mm.
small role apparently, and
Yeah.
so it's making me want to go back and
Yeah.
rewatch that.
As does one of our other stars here.
I know. Which international productions all over Europe during the
Yeah.
'60s, it's going to happen, I guess.
And of course, in the early 70s, she did a fair few Decamerotici
Hmm.
films, including Beautiful Antonia, first a nun, then a demon, which sounds definitely
Well, she was
uh,
also in the
worth
film.
watching.
There were a couple of films with titles like the one I'm about to relate. She was in the film When Men Carried Clubs and Women Played Ding Dong
Yeah,
from
yeah,
1971. Yeah, and
yes. There was a time when I had that on a list for one of our seasons.
well, here's the thing. I've never seen that, and you would think, especially in my youth, because I stumbled across this in, I don't know, so that title I stumbled across probably in an issue of Psychotronic magazine back in the late '80s, early '90s, and you would think with that title, as soon as I could lay hands on a copy, and of course, all bow before the internet, it can be
Hmm.
seen, I would have sought such a film out, but
Mm.
I have not. And so my interest in it is like, to be clear, I probably have more interest in seeing another movie she made that same year called Knights and Loves of Don Juan, even
Oh
if it
yeah.
turns out to be a comedy, which
Oh,
I'm
it will
sure
be.
it is. I'm sure
Yeah,
it
it
is.
will be. Do you know the film The Sexorcist? Oh, it
No,
sounds so
no,
silly when I say this out loud.
I've heard the title.
Yeah, Lo Cessa, which is another one of those Exorcist knockoffs
Variations.
that was so popular around 1974.
Isn't that the
But
kind?
yeah,
Wait, I just did the kind thing. I said that an Exorcist variation. In other words,
oh,
I'm trying to be very kind
yeah.
and not say it was a ripoff by a producer attempting to cash in. No.
Mm. I mean, there are some good ones, but
Oh yeah, of
yeah, that's
course.
that's another one to seek out. So, yeah, and she stopped working basically around 1980. I think she
Hmm.
remarried um, after she left him and married somebody else, and then just seemed to stop acting. And then eventually, she was a dancer as well.
Hmm.
She became a kind of community activist in the Seychelles, where she went to live, and became as an artist, and just lived very happily in the Seychelles.
Until I think 2019. Is that
Yeah, only
right?
about
Yeah.
5 years ago.
And
So
I have to
yeah, sad.
say, not being familiar with her other than her name and having accidentally run across her in a few films, I have to say that in this film, she's luminous.
Oh
The camera
yes,
loves this woman from head to toe.
there's an
I can't take my eyes of her when she's on
yeah.
screen.
There's this one sequence towards the end where she's wearing the most amazing outfit.
The one with
I
the
mean,
where her back is bare.
it's like it just screams late 60s.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
she wears it beautifully.
yeah,
She's it's an astonishing piece of, I guess, fashion. I mean, we're gonna have to
hmm,
refer to it as fashion, but
yeah,
she's I cannot take my eyes off of her on screen, and it's not just
yeah,
because of the clothing. Her face was
hmm,
made to be photographed.
mm, yeah. She's really good. But just that costume, particularly, it made me sort of think, oh, so maybe this film did have a costume designer. Because you look at Phenomenal, and you sort of think, well, what happened there? But
Well, I mean,
yeah,
here's the thing. I once again, I'm not. I don't want to paint myself as being kind to this film out of some out of something other than just honestly having come to this conclusion. But I do think that the outfit they have him in, I think it is, of course, a knockoff of several Fumetti characters.
Mm.
Yes, we could run down the list, but
But
it also is just so it is a complete head to toe black outfit that covers
yeah,
every aspect of the person's body. Strangely enough, except for his hands.
mm.
He does not wear
So
gloves, which is very
he
strange.
leave his fingerprints everywhere.
Exactly, and also give whoever is attempting to figure him out at least one clue as
Yeah,
they already have the body type, and now
yeah.
now they know, oh, he's Caucasian. So okay,
He's also just wearing regular trousers and shoes. Like it's not even a
it
kind of
seems,
catsuit or
yeah.
anything.
The really interesting part is the complete over the head black mask, which it's as
Yeah.
if it's the flip side of the mask worn by the killer in Blood and Black Lace,
Mm.
and it works. I do I do want I'm guessing that it was easy for the actor to see through because he clearly has absolutely no trouble. I kept my eyes, especially in that opening sequence when we first see him walking around with this thing completely over his face. I do have lingering Spider-Man syndrome where I'm like, I need an excuse for how you see through this crap, buddy.
Yes.
And so I see him on the boat, walking down a hallway and grabbing onto the door frame perfectly. So okay, yeah, he definitely can see through this thing.
Mm.
They weren't faking it during the fight sequences just to make everything look cool. But it
Yeah.
is
It's
also, especially for you and I going through a season like this, it is also generic because he's just this dude dressed in black.
yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. But anyway, one other person to mention. Well, there's actually maybe two more cast members worth mentioning. But as we've already mentioned him, John Carlson,
Ah, yes,
our New Zealand actor. I think we've talked about him
several
before.
times.
And he was born looking like an old man.
Yes, it's like when you see a baby that's born looking
Yeah,
like an old man. He just stayed that
yeah.
way.
It's like Benjamin Button. And
Only never altered, never actually aging in either
never getting
direction.
younger.
He's roughly 58 always. Yeah.
I think he's always played old men during his career, which is primarily in Italy,
Mm-hmm.
although he's done a few other things. But yeah, I mean, he was only in his 40s when he made this film, but he's always playing elderly professors.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've seen him in The Outsider, the Margheriti film that we did way back in the beginning.
That would be
Um,
also Battle of the Worlds for
yeah.
those needing
Oh yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
English title. Yes.
And he's in She Beast as well, as we mentioned. We also talked about him on your podcast because he was in Mission Stardust,
Yep.
which is good fun. I've seen him in things like Werewolf in a Girl's Dormitory, and
Have you ever seen? I was surprised to realize this because it's been years since I watched it. But have you ever seen Crack in the World?
I don't think I have actually.
It's actually a good film. It's a kind of apocalyptic. It's an American production. It's kind of an
Oh
apocalyptic
yeah, yeah, yeah,
end of the world scenario from
hmm
1965 with Dana Andrews
yeah.
in the lead. Worth seeing at least once. It's a good
Mm.
film.
Yeah, he's in Maciste all'Inferno,
Hmm.
which is sort of Bava connected peplum. But then he's also been in more respectable films, if that's, I put respectable in air quotes,
Hmm.
like Fellini's Eight and a Half, Cleopatra, Modesty Blaze. Yeah, just a really long and interesting career. And then
For
obviously in the 70s.
for the Mystery Science Theater fans out there, he is also a character in the Christmas That Almost Wasn't, the
Oh, what's
Italian.
that?
Oh, it's an Italian Christmas film. Have you never seen that?
No.
I
Is it?
Wow. Now I have to make a decision. Do I recommend this or not?
But it's on MST3K, is it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In a recent season, I
Okay.
can't remember which one. One of the recent seasons when
Oh,
they brought it
nice.
back, they did they're usually trying to find some kind of crazy ass Christmas style film to for that
Okay.
time of year, and the Italian production, the Christmas That Almost Wasn't, is mind bendingly well. You have to go into it knowing that it is what it is, and you've got to accept it for the
Mm.
problems that you're going to encounter in a film primarily aimed at kids, but
Right.
it's still it's strangely well produced. It looks good. It's an attractive looking movie. It's just weird, weird, weird. I mean, let's put it this way: the
Oh,
plot
good.
involves Santa needing to earn extra money to pay overdue rent. So,
Excellent. I'm in.
there's your pathway.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm in. I mean, he just had such a long career. I mean, he only actually passed away when he actually was old in the end, in his late 90s, about 6 or 7 years ago.
Finally aged
But
into that face.
yeah, he aged his, yeah, exactly. But he's done films with Polanski. He did quite a few for Fellini.
Mm-hmm.
He also is in a film I just watched recently for the first time, Footprints on the Moon,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which it was really good. That just came out on Blu-ray over here. And he's in one of my favourite films when I was a kid with Mickey Rooney, The Black Stallion.
Oh yeah, that's
So
right.
yeah, really
I remember
interesting.
him. I remember him for the 1-2 punch of Michele Suave's The Church and
Oh
Bill
yes,
and Ted's Excellent
yeah.
Adventure in the same year. It's like, whoa, how did that happen?
Oh man, and then he did Roger Corman's last movie, Frankenstein Unbound.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm. I did not remember him in that until I
mm,
looked at the list, but it's true.
yeah, there you go. So really, yeah, it would be good to know. Again, with all these people, I hope there are interviews on a Blu-ray somewhere. Maybe I just
Oh
haven't
me,
seen it,
yeah,
but
yeah. I hope
for
so.
somebody who had such a long career, and particularly in Italy, and then only died in 2017, you would hope that he talked to people about his career at some point. Yeah, he's a pretty
Because
amazing
Lord
guy.
knows he had stories. My goodness.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, just filming Michael Reeves' She Beast must have been fun.
Hmm. Yes.
And then finally, Gordon Mitchell. He must be somebody that we need to mention.
Well, he was only in about 150 films, so.
Mm. And he plays. So we should have mentioned John Carlson plays a kind of professor, archaeology,
Hmm.
Egyptologist, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And Gordon Mitchell, who's also American, very tall and blonde.
Hmm.
He's taller than everyone else by about a foot in this film. And yeah, so is he another person who went to Italy to be in Peplum films?
Yeah, he was a bodybuilder. Saw what Steve Reeves was getting up to, and decided I want a slice of that. And he'd done a few bit roles in some Hollywood productions, some uncredited stuff here and there. And because he is kind of visually striking, and I assume that they would have used him, as a soldier to, in the background and things of that nature. So he goes to Italy, starts turning up in movie after movie after movie. Giant of Metropolis, Fury of Achilles. Um, Quickly becomes very successful, and there are more than a few of his films that I think are worth your time. Not
Mm.
necessarily just because he's in them, but because I think that his career threads its way through some of the fun genres that were being
Yeah,
produced in the 60s and 70s. Not just the peplum stuff, which take your shirt off because you're a muscle man and get out there and wrestle, but also a few spaghetti westerns. I'm partial to films like Eric the Viking as well. Recently, Lady Morgan's Vengeance got released on Blu-ray, so
oh, it's
there's
so good.
yeah. So there's that, and then
Yeah, really good film.
yeah, and but the thing is, he would occasionally turn up in European produced productions, like John Huston's Reflections in a Golden Eye. Now it's a small
Yeah.
role. He's the guy.
Mm.
He's the guy in charge of the stables. And if you've seen Reflections in a Golden Eye, you know how important the stables and the horses are in that film. So
Hmm.
I'll just leave it at that. Leave
Mm.
Reflections in a Golden Eye as a tantalizing, probable need to see. If you've never seen it, it's worth your time. And but he primarily is in all the stuff that we like.
Yeah.
When you're in films, don't get me wrong, he pops up in things like Fellini Satyricon, of course, but the I Am Sartana, Your Angel of Death, and Death on the Run, The Killer Likes Candy. These are film titles that immediately draw people who are probably
Yeah.
prone to listen to a show like this
Yeah.
to see them. And don't forget his immortal portrayal of Dr. Otto Frankenstein in Frankenstein 80. So,
yes, of course.
yes, yes.
I quite like the sound of Una Donna per. Yeah, well, I'll start again. I'll just say it in English. One woman for seven bastards.
Yes, 1974.
That's quite good.
74 was a busy year for him, as far as I could tell. He
Yeah.
was also Igor in Frankenstein's Castle of Freaks.
Yeah.
And if you've
Also,
ever seen Frankenstein's Castle of Freaks, it's a film you will not soon forget, folks.
he seems to have gone off to Hong Kong as well at one point and done some Hong
Apparently,
Kong
yeah.
films. So yeah, just constantly working. And I think he was in an Emmanuel film and all kinds of stuff. So, and in this film, he is clearly a villain, like right from the beginning, and there's no doubt.
Oh yeah, well he's identified on screen at that party
Yeah, yeah.
as a confidence man.
Somebody that they are, yeah, basically right from the beginning, he's planning to steal. Well, we should get into the plot, and then we'll.
Oh, we forgot. Everyone here, if you've been following this podcast, we saw him in Endgame as well. So.
Oh yes. Oh man, what a film. Yeah. So okay. So I've got here. I'm using this time. You can hear me probably moving the book around by the microphone. My book by Fad Press, The Savage Cinema of Ruggero Deodato.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had this book for about 10 years, and they just recently put it out again, another new version. So I've read about this film a long time ago, which is one of the reasons I was curious to finally see it. So I'll read the plot summary from this one this time.
Okay.
The mask of Tutankamen is stolen from the Louvre Museum. The perpetrator of the crime is Volkov, head of a criminal gang. That sounds like an insult, doesn't it? You shout at somebody. Volkov, head of a criminal gang.
Yes, I hadn't thought of it. I said, but see, that's just it. I kept hearing them say Falco or Falcon or something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, okay, that's good. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Maybe it depends. No, that's fine. Maybe it depends which version you're watching or listening to. Mm-hmm. So he's the head of a criminal gang specializing in sensational thefts. A mysterious man disguised with a black stocking. I should also mention in his gang, one of the members of his gang is Maurizio Merli, before he was famous.
Oh, yeah.
Which is quite cool. Mysterious man disguised with a black stocking successfully retrieves the mask and returns it to the director of the museum, Auguste Dorian, because we're in Paris, obviously. There's lots of shots of Paris. This is not our first trip to Paris in this season. Seems to be a popular place to go for masked heroes and masked villains.
Yes.
Although Deodato knows when he can get some good free production value, because there's a huge rally down the Champs-Élysées of President de Gaulle, this huge cavalcade, thousands of people. So he just goes and shoots a scene. So there are people staring at the camera at various points because he's just filming. I think there's one point where his camera is up a tree and a policeman looks straight up at him to think, what's that guy doing up there?
What is this idiot doing?
Yeah, but he gets some good extra production value. And one nice bit of trivia is that in the crowd was Rex Harrison. He gets a very brief shot of Rex Harrison just watching this procession.
Did you spot him? I went back and tried to take a quick look, but I couldn't spot him.
This is where we really need a Blu-ray to be able to see that, because he's like a smudged face in the crowd somewhere.
Well, yeah.
So so there we go. Meanwhile, I don't want to. Lots of people won't have seen this, so I don't want to give away too much. And this plot description is got some spoilers. But basically, the one that he returns turns out to be a copy, and then we've got an insurance investigator brought in called Mike Shevlov,
That's
which
Lucretia
is
Love.
Lucretia Love. Why they've called her Mike Shevlov is anyone's guess.
One wonders if perhaps that was a name in the script. It was originally going to be a man, and they just went with it.
They just didn't change it. So the insurance director then gets on the case. There are various other characters involved. There is the Count Norton, who appears to be the director of the museum. We've got this Egyptology professor. who identifies when it's returned that it's a fake. And then, so Fenomenal just kind of comes and goes at various points. I almost sort of feel like the film could have been made without Fenomenal even being in it. It could have just been just a sort of heist movie, because then we've got police, we've got car chases.
Do you not think that, to a large degree, this is more a Eurospy film than a Fumetti film?
Yeah, he didn't need that bag on his head. It could have done the whole thing.
Back on his head. Well, it's not just that. Let's talk about why the first half is as dull as it is. We get that opening sequence, which is capped by the various newspapers announcing, that Phenomenal did this thing and captured ended this drug smuggling ring and yada yada yada, handed everything over to the cops, and and then we have this long sequence where we watch this team of people break into the museum where the Tutankamen treasures are being displayed. And not to give anything away here, because it's the first 20 minutes of the film. We spend all of this time with this intricate plot to get inside there. They break in, they're able to get to a certain point, and then it turns out
they club some other guards over the head.
They don't kill
violence.
They don't kill anyone, but they do lay these folks out. And then, of course, it turns out that they are police officers that have been sent in to see if this can be done. And so we've spent about 15 minutes of screen time watching an if this led to something, it would be different. But an break-in sequence to this museum that is then, you might as well have just, spit into the wind. There's nothing to it. Thank you. This means nothing. All righty. Yay.
Because the second twist is that they don't even keep Tutankhamen, because they're all after Tutankhamun's mask. Although the film is the treasure of Tutankhamen, as far as we can tell, it's just the mask. There's no other treasure knocking about. And it turns out that they put it in a safe overnight anyway.
Right.
They don't even keep it on display at night. This is where they have one of the copies on display. And so then we get a whole extra thing where the real villains have managed to infiltrate to find out what the safe code is, which is where what's his name, Volkov comes in with his helpers.
Falcon, whatever he is.
Yeah. So he's then planning his own robbery, which involves getting in a completely different way to how the police got in. But yeah, the whole sequence feels just like we're padding.
Yeah, it is. It's a complete waste of time. And so after that's a gargantuan storytelling misstep, because the film is, no matter what version you see, it's under 90 minutes. And so when you get a full 12 to 15 minute long chunk of it at the beginning that is pointless, and you are told it's pointless, and you are shown it's pointless, and it is obviously pointless. It's just were they counting on people, coming into the theater late? I know that was a common thing in Italy. It's just like, well, they're really not going to see this from the beginning, so it doesn't really matter. We'll just,
True.
It's a frustrating thing that seems like a massive waste of time, effort, and screenplay. It should have been discarded and a different way, or just cut it down so that it's like well under 3 or 4 minutes to give you the idea of what they're doing. But hey, that we're not back there. We're not the producer, and maybe you could have sold it to Parenti as, hey, we'll get to see you on screen faster. Let's shorten this down. But that's not the path they chose.
No.
Oh man. But that's a serious misstep. And anybody who checks out in the first half of this film thinking this is going to be too dull, I understand. I do.
Yeah. In the book, in the Fab Press book, they talk about it being sort of reminiscent of the Pink Panther movies. And which we talked about, we brought that up last time. Yeah. Because The Relic was very much like a Pink Panther film.
Very much.
Whereas, like you said, this is much more like a sort of Euro spy crime thriller only it's not very thrilling.
No, not at all.
But apparently it was a colossal flop.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. Um, in both the books, they talk about how it just didn't do very well. They didn't have much budget. At one point, Deodato puts himself in the film. He has a cameo as a man falling off a bike, and that was just because they didn't have any money to pay anyone else to do it. But that, in a way, kind of triggered something in Deodato, because like Hitchcock, he often appears in his films. There's quite a few times where he has a cameo in one of his movies.
Yeah, well, he didn't go full Fulci and write an actual speaking role for himself. But yeah,
or just write a whole film about himself, like the what was that one? The something
Cat in the Brain. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's there's quite a good, like, towards the end when Fenomenal finally gets in on the action and there's a whole big chase and he's after the bad guys and he goes into this Turkish, because we're in Paris for a lot, and then we go to Tunisia and ends up in a Turkish bath, as you would, as they always seem to do. I've never ended up in a Turkish bath in my life, but in films,
well, from the films, it just seems like
they're always
you can almost accidentally just walk right into one.
You turn the wrong corner and you're in there. So there's a whole sequence where there's a big fight between him and the Turkish bath guy in the actual room that's full of women wearing towels. Now, there are promotional photos of this film, of that scene, which is just loads of topless women.
Oh, really?
And yeah, so, but I did my homework, Rod. I didn't want to let our listeners down. Okay. I did check in both versions, and it's the same in both. They've all got their towels on.
Okay, thank you. That makes me breathe just a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's possible that this is just posed for a publicity photo.
Probably so.
Or possibly they shot it for Japan or something. But if that footage exists, it's not in either of the prints that are on YouTube.
Okay.
Although interestingly, in the wide shot, so when the doors first open and he starts fighting outside the bath area, you can see one of the women is sort of half naked, but then once they burst through the door, she's got a towel on. So who knows? And so, like I said, with the two versions, as far as I can tell, it's just that the English version is trimmed a little bit. But maybe there are some differences. Maybe they did shoot scenes slightly differently.
This is beginning to feel very much like Adrian Smith goes through this sequence of the film like it's the Zapruder film, searching for clues. Are there hidden nipples? Wait, hey.
It'd be like the Blow Up, and just be constantly
exactly.
Or that great, that bit in High Anxiety where he gets the photo blown up, and it's like the whole wall.
It's an entire wall stretched up as far. There it is.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Well, I'm beginning to get the sense that you were not enamored of this film.
No, I was disappointed, and I did feel maybe I should give up and watch the English version. It'll make a bit more sense, but from what I've read, I don't think I missed very much, even if it does make a bit more sense.
Well, I will say this. I think that, yes, the English language version is probably the better choice because it for us English speakers, we're able to actually figure out what the hell is going on most of the time. And I think that it gives us, and here's where we get to play the game. How different are the various dubs? Because I have to tell you, there are things that are in the English dub that I find, I'll use the word strange, but they're not out of place. They fit the context of the scenes they're in, so they may very well be exactly what was intended.
Right.
In the Italian script, I have no idea, but there are a couple of details, mostly in a film like this. What the dialogue is intended to do is to move the plot forward, to give just a little bit of color, to perhaps, if you can, enhance the mystery of, the central mystery of who is Phenomenal. Everybody point to the obvious person, and it becomes a very interesting play to figure out, wow, so this weird dialogue, is this accurate or good, or does it serve the film well? And there's a couple of things. I'll reference a smaller one, which is later in the film, where at one point Count Guy Norton, who is of course phenomenal.
Oh, spoiler!
Yes, I'm sorry, people, but if you're 30 minutes into the film and you don't know who the character is, it's only because it took you that long because he doesn't show up till about 25 minutes into the film in the first place. Nevertheless, he comes back into a room, is speaking to someone, and someone who has exited the film in one way or another. He says, "Oh, they slipped on a banana peel." It's like,
Oh,
really? That was
what?
your choice for the dialogue? But that is not the best. That is at least not my favorite. My favorite, and I cannot remember how this is given voice in the Italian print, but it's when Lucretia Love's character first meets the Count Guy Norton character, and she introduces herself as the as the I almost want to say the daughter of the spam baron, but it's not really spam. It's some other canned meat, and which is automatically amusing to begin with, because this is her cover. This is the story she's giving out to be allowed to be around all of these wealthy Europeans, and she pinches Guy Norton's arm or hand. I can't remember exactly. And he turns to her and she explains that the reason she did this is because she wants the relationship to get off onto a good start. And she says, and I quote, "When a relationship is based on pain, things always work out."
wow.
And so that is, without a doubt, my favorite line in the entire movie. Like, what in the name of all that is holy was the idea here? Now, that is very interesting. It's obviously going to stick in my mind for way longer than the other details that are in this film. But I wonder if that was stolen from some piece of literature or if it's something lifted from another film.
Maybe it was in their wedding vows.
If that was part of their wedding vows, then I want to hear the entire wedding vow. I want to hear both sides, male and female. I want to hear what the priest said. But I mean, if you did not, I'm assuming that I'm now introducing you for the first time to this line because you did not watch the English language version.
Don't think. No, I think it said something else in the Italian version. It probably said something completely random that didn't make sense. I'm sure I was getting about 60%. I think. Possibly.
Well, but understand that,
mind.
and I am not going to go out of my way to defend this film, but I will say that I do think that a more visually pleasing version of this movie would and the English dub, or if it needs it, like the full length longer version of it with the trims back in it, with possibly Italian, English subtitles over the pieces that weren't dubbed into English, if that's part of it. I think that could elevate this film just a smidge, because I have to say I didn't hate this film.
Oh no, I mean I don't. Yeah, no, I didn't hate it. I just was underwhelmed. I suppose.
And that's valid.
I agree
that easily.
I mean, with all these things, the films generally become better just if their presentation is better. That really helps.
Yeah.
We can revisit films that we watched years ago on some terrible copy that we thought were rubbish, and then you get a 4K restoration, and suddenly you think, oh wow, this is amazing actually. So I think that would probably help. And the music, I mean, I'll play a bit more of the music in here because the music really does lift the film.
It does
when it needs it. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the writing and about where that line came from. According to the IMDb, anyway, there are 2 credited writers, one of whom was Ruggero Deodato himself, and this is his first credited screenplay. And then there's another name, Aldo Aldo Iginio Capone, and I know I've mangled that one, I'm sorry. And this is the only credit, so I've got no idea who that is. but it's a
And
one-off. It might not even be a real
I did a
person.
quick search trying to find some more details about that person, because sometimes when someone only has a couple or even a single credit for feature films, then maybe they did a lot more work in television, especially maybe Italian television or something like that, or maybe they were a writer in some other way or a journalist. I could find nothing.
No. So, I mean, maybe it was just Deodato himself, and he was quite early in his career and he's just getting the hang of it, so I don't know. But yeah, this kind of just feels like a film that needed to be either funnier or kind of more violent, a bit more aggressive perhaps,
Yeah.
or a bit sexier, and it just kind of falls short.
And
Do you know what I mean?
I think you have just put into words my feelings about how this film could have been elevated, and I think you hit all three topics there. It could have been a little more. I mean, there is action. I mean, there's a couple of car chases and things like that, but it could have been. I guess more violent is the best way to put it, as you did. It could have definitely been sexier. It's not enough to just put some very attractive ladies on screen. There's none of the ladies are
and attractive men. We should.
Well,
say,
I mean,
too.
I think I don't want to sound ridiculous here, but I mean, no, I'm not going to claim John Carlson's a handsome man, but Gordon Mitchell's a good-looking guy. I think our lead. I think the reason why it was possibly deemed a good idea to put the producer in front of the camera is he's a handsome man.
Yeah, he does. He rocks a beard.
I mean, he is a good-looking fella. Don't get me wrong, but it's the film seems to breeze past a number of situations that lend themselves very effectively to being a bit more Bond sexy, and it just seems to nod its head in the direction of, we could have done that, but we are more busy, I don't know, going to dinner or whatever it is that we're doing after we're through shooting for the day.
Going to China.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I don't really know. But I think you're right. I think you identified the categories in which it seems to kind of fall down. We can do all the nitpicking about why the pointless break-in sequence in the first act that really just would, for almost anyone watching the film, would make you throw up your hands, because it's like, oh well, great, I can just completely disregard hanging on to the details that this went down, because it doesn't matter. It's, okay, good. Well, what do I do now? I guess they better put something. If they had put immediately something attention grabbing after that sequence, it might have been something that wouldn't have mattered, but they don't. The movie kind of drags a bit in the for like half an hour. I mean, after the opening, the next half hour is kind of like, okay, okay, yeah.
It does. It picks up. The last half hour is definitely its saving grace. Yeah, there's some car chases, quite a good explosion. There's quite a few things going on, but it does remain quite confusing. I think because they're trying, I don't know why they feel they need to, but they're trying to keep the identity of Fenomenal a secret. And I get that he needs to keep it a secret from everyone else, but they don't also need to keep it a secret from the audience.
Because the audience, and I think if there aren't a plethora of possibilities here, people. I mean, it's him. We know it's him. As soon as we hear him listening in on the phone conversation someone is placing from his house, it's like, oh, okay, so yeah. So we could have done with a bit more getting to know him as, why is this guy dressing up and doing all this stuff? And maybe a little bit of a secret lair, or like a base with some cool gadgets, or just a bit more about him, because otherwise he could have basically done everything that he did without being Phenomenal. There's not enough as to his motivation, and because they're trying to keep it hidden from the audience, it basically means that we don't get to know Phenomenal at all, and that seems a bit odd,
pointless, really.
Well, now here's the thing. As I stated earlier, this seems much more in the realm of a Eurospy film to me than it is as part of
Yeah.
the fumetti thing. And of course, that's not something that you and I would necessarily have known going in. It has enough fumetti elements, of course, to qualify for
Hmm.
what we're covering here. But what my thoughts immediately turn to are what we constantly are calling for and begging for and hoping for and crossing our fingers and lighting candles for, is the eventual release
Yeah.
of more and more of this genre stuff onto high quality high definition Blu-ray of some sort, so that we can all kind of revel in this
Yeah.
stuff. We all want what's happening currently with the gothic sets that Severn's putting out to be replicated in other genres, specifically
Yeah.
Eurospy.
Well, you would
You
think that
know,
there's, yes, and you'd think there's commercial value just in Deodato and that name
well, that's
on the
just it. There's
box.
there's commercial value in, I think, high quality releases of a lot of the Peplum stuff, high quality releases of
Hmm.
Eurospy stuff, and I think that it would be possible to. I mean, I don't think you could do more than a few boxes, a few sets, I would say, of things like the fumetti stuff that we're covering in this season. But it would be a good idea if you could get your hands on some of them, because they were an interesting subset. I mean, we have a release of Satanic now, and of course, Danger Diabolic is never going to go out of print. But there are many
Yeah.
others, as we're covering in this season, to point out. And it seems that it would be a good idea for someone to kind of test the waters with this to see
Yeah.
how it gets responded to, because I do suspect that the Eurospy stuff would be a fairly easy sell,
Yeah.
and this could be one of the films that ends up in one of those sets, because it is closer to the Eurospy thing.
Hmm.
So the, this would be one that, if cleaned up, it could become someone's, you know, go to for an example of a movie that improves after you after you get it scrubbed and
Yeah.
can
Sure.
really evaluate it without all of the detritus of multi-generation dupes and an idea of what you can actually see. No one's
Hmm.
ever going to think it's perfect, but at the same time,
No.
it has enough points of interest to make it
Yeah.
worthwhile. And of course, Deodato, it being the first quote unquote official directed by Ruggero Deodato film.
Yeah.
There you go. But man, once again, just want to, once again, bow down on both knees and beg the Blu-ray gods, please,
Yeah.
please, man, start putting some of this stuff out.
I know. There's like I just counted in the book, and there are. I think he made 8 films before Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man, and all of those 8 movies are basically kind of forgotten and not really available. And you've got people like Lucio Fulci, of course, who had a long career before he made any
Mm-hmm.
horror films at all, and lots of those films are not talked about or basically forgotten. So yeah, there's still this whole sort of wealth of cult stuff out there by quite popular directors, and surely boutique labels know that above all else, cult film fans are
Mm-hmm.
completists.
And
We want to own everything
right.
by a certain
And
director.
I'm not
You know.
begging for a Jungle Girl box set. I'm not
Oh, I am.
crazy. If you want to do it, that's fine. I want it. But come on, man, the Eurospy stuff. The Eurospy stuff is. I continue to say that seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, if anyone does want to do a Jungle Girl box set, Rod and I are available to do commentaries for Gungala
At
at
the
the
very
very least.
least, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It would be good if only we could just start our own company. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
that's a
well,
whole other thing.
the financial cliff that we would be jumping off in that respect. Oh my
I
lord.
know, yeah. But it always amazes me that you get new boutique labels suddenly appearing and doing
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
stuff. Somebody in America has just put out a 4K of Case of the Bloody
Yeah, I
Iris.
just saw that announcement. Yeah.
I forget the name of the label, but that's a new label. They just their
But
first
see that I
release.
think that's a safe release.
Yeah,
That has been a success on multiple DVDs and on Blu-ray. That's a
yeah,
film that has sold well regardless. It has Yeah,
Giallo,
Giallo, Edward
yeah,
Fennick,
Giallo will always
Sergio
do well.
Martino. It's one of those things where you're just like, come on, man. Everybody and their grandmother knows that film and its reputation. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, anyway, so I think when it comes to our ranking at the end of the season, you can probably guess where Phenomenal
yeah,
will be
yeah,
roughly for me, but we'll see. We've still got a few more films to
true.
go. One last bit of trivia to mention is that part of this film, the actual setting for the museum, was shot in the Villa Miani in Rome, which was also seen in Argo Man and An Angel for Satan. I think it was used as the
Hmm.
house in there. And I just looked it up, and it's now a very expensive wedding venue in Rome. And there are, so you can go and hold your wedding and reminisce about your favourite moments from this film. Anyway, so coming up soon, when we do our next episode after I get back from my trip, will be the one that we've all been waiting for, probably Danger
Oh, is
Diabolic.
that the next one? Really? Okay.
So that is the
Okay.
next
Okay.
one. I think it's time. So we've been in. I don't think we mentioned the year, but these films are all very sort of close together. The last few that we did were in 1967. We've now just hit
Right.
1968, and so our next, so this film and the next three are all 68. So it was a good year for Fumetti films. Kind of the sort of diabolic bounce, I guess, on all
Well,
these
everybody
other
taking
tales. But
advantage of the fact
I'm
that they all knew
yeah.
that that Danger Diabolic was coming out. So
Yeah, exactly. But I'm looking forward to that one, and I'm really looking forward to Satanic. I just got the
yes, myself as
Blu-ray,
well.
so and I went for the T-shirt bundle, even though I'm not sure if I'm ever going to be able to wear it in public because people will assume that I'm a Satanist, and I'll just constantly have to explain. But
You should just wear it when you're being interviewed for possible Blu-ray extras in the future. Just to
that's
point out.
true.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, good idea. Funnily enough, I am actually being interviewed next week for a Doctor Who documentary, but
Well, there you go. Now you know what T-shirt to wear.
that's a whole other story. Yeah, well, hey, there we go. So thank you everybody for listening again. Thank you for all the feedback. Do all the things that we ask, like, subscribe, tell your friends, leave a review. Get in touch with us on the email wildwildpodcast@gmail.com, and we're also on Instagram and Twitter. And we will be back in July with what is undoubtedly probably the best one of all of them, Danger Diabolic. I did think about saving it till last because it is clearly the best by a country mile. But I thought, no, we'll stick it in chronological order, and we'll be fine. But anyway, looking
you
forward
are
to
a
that next
stickler,
time.
sir.
Exactly. I've made the rules, and no one else cares but me, but I'm sticking to them anyway. So, Rod, anything that you want to tell us about before we go, or warn us about anything you've got coming up?
Still perking along. Trying to get an episode of the Bloody Pit edited. We recorded about the film A Boy and His Dog. I'm trying to get that episode put together. It's not part of the ongoing years-long string of 1970s science fiction films that a buddy and I named Randy Fox have been carving our way through for our enjoyment, if for no one else's. And we're hoping to actually also, by the end of this summer, finally tackle what we consider to be one of the biggies, Zardoz. So,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so doing that, got a commentary to record here in a few weeks. Got
Nice.
oh man, I've saddled myself with 3 co-hosts to talk about Hail of the Living Dead. Save me. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Apparently, it's going to take 4 of us to discuss that disaster area of a film. So yeah, yeah.
Is that Bruno
Yes, it is.
Mattei? Is that
Yes,
one? Okay.
yes, it is. It is fighting
Cool.
zombies in a tutu. Yes, it is.
I I enjoyed your Nashi cast feedback episode.
Oh, we had so many letters. We always try to keep those feedback episodes short, and we realized that this one was going to stretch because we had not done letters in some time. That was good. So, yeah, it was.
One of the things that you talked about was best depictions of the devil.
Yeah, someone brought that up.
And I was surprised that nobody mentioned Pasolini's The Canterbury Tales, which, of course, we did our Decameron season a couple of years ago, and so I watched The Canterbury Tales, and there's that amazing sequence when somebody goes to hell, and there's this massive satanic arse crapping out friars into a big pit. I mean, that's got to be one of the best ones, right? Just this giant devil's bum.
Is that what they call a metaphor? Wait.
Yeah, very possibly. You got to love medieval Chaucer stuff, man. It's amazing. But anyway, that was one that came to mind for me, was the giant bum and all these priests and friars falling out. Anyway, there we go. That's an image to end on, I think, for us all. So yeah, we'll be back in a few weeks for some diabolical podcast. It's terrible. I'm so sorry.
You've gotten the art of ending these shows. You go through these waves where you have it down, and then a show comes along like this where it feels like someone stuffed a banana in your mouth and you're trying to figure out how to use teeth. It's very strange.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Next time I'll come up with something that's more phenomenal.
Here, let me do this. Folks, thank you for listening to the show. Please contact the podcast if you have any comments about how poorly we end this episode and how poorly we've ended other episodes. Praise us, laugh at us, send us comments, ask us questions. Let us know what you possibly thought of Fenomenal and the Treasure of Tutankamen. My name is Rod Barnett. I am across the oceans from Mr. Adrian Smith, the doctor. And we thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now. And I think I'm just going to get you to do that every time now.